Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Christian Reeve Podcast. Man, it feels good to say that, actually. That's weird. Even though it's only been a week or whatever, I suppose it will depend when this episode drops. And I should know that because I am the author of this podcast and I do create it. But I'm getting busier and busier. And I always say that busy is good. I think busy is always good, always a good thing, always good to be busy because that means things are happening, things are in motion. But at the same time, trying to keep a podcast going continuously week by week is hard. And, we're up to 130 episodes now. 130. If you'd have told me when I started this that we'd get to 50, I would have told you were crazy. But here we are, 130 episodes. And as I've said before, my approach to podcasting is always changing and developing, as I think many things that we do in life changes over time, for better or worse. But I like to think this is for the better because I'm trying different things. So the episode you saw last time was, I guess, like a kind of a hybrid. I was trying to kind of combine a bunch of things together, mostly for the purpose of advertising my two guests that I'd had on the show much earlier in, I believe, 2021, possibly 2020. I don't know. Life's a blur right now. But I wanted to showcase them because I thought that, they were both very talented individuals and they deserved that platform. And even though the quality of those recordings wasn't so good because they were done on Instagram, that's besides the point, really, isn't it? So yeah, if I ever do those live episodes, there will be the live interaction, which is a good thing for those who see it live on Instagram. But when they eventually get uploaded, the quality is not going to be great, unfortunately. But I think I will continue to add extra content onto the beginning of those episodes so that at least you get a kind of, I suppose, like a double podcast in a sense. So you always get, this kind of standard quality episode in some shape or form. I don't know. In my head, it makes sense. For the small gaggle of people, if that's a thing, gaggle, yeah, of people that are listening and watching the Christian Reeve podcast, I thank you. I'm trying all of these things for you. If you ever have any ideas or anything that you want to hear me talk about or speak about or anything else, any particular guests you have in mind, let me know, throw them my way, and I will review them and I will get back to you in some shape or form. Today's episode comes a little bit late. Technically, the work anniversary of 10 years actually occurred in August 2021. And there's a couple of asterisks on this, caveats. I don't know how to explain them. I'll call them as they come. But yeah, officially in August of 2021, that marked the 10 years work anniversary. 10 years of me working in an official capacity with a contract, etc. Now, that might not sound like a big deal to most people because, I'm sure many people listening here have worked many more years than that. And work is just something we all have to do. So who cares, right? But the unique situation with me is that in that 10 years, I have done many, many different types of jobs. And that maybe is not so usual. Normally, I don't know, I suppose in corporate business and such, it's pretty common to jump from job to job. And that's something that's changed in the last probably 50 years in the sense that, it used to be you stick with a company 50 years, you get your golden watch at the end of it and you leave. I don't know, something like that, right? But times change, society changes, and now the expectation is that, people can hop anywhere from 6 months up to 2 years between companies, sometimes less than that, in a bid to gain all the skills and knowledge they need and to progress their careers, And obviously some careers it's better to stay on for longer, other careers not so much. It just so happens that a lot of my different types of jobs have kind of been influenced largely by what's been going on in the rest of my life. So obviously being at university is a big factor in that, and we'll get to that later. But I guess I just wanted to kind of tackle this subject because I thought that it was an interesting thing to reflect on over the past 10 years. It's an interesting anniversary, I think, for me, just reflecting on what I've learned through that time, what kind of key lessons tend to link between each job, which is interesting because sometimes different types of jobs can be very similar, and you can find similarities in completely different fields. And I think that's very interesting. Again, it's just me saying that I'm interested. Like, I don't know if you'll find it interesting, but for me, it's interesting. I guess that's a key theme with my podcast, really, isn't it? As I venture to do more of these discussion-based episodes. But no, I guess I just want to take you back on a bit of a journey, share some stories and what I learned. Some of these I've never actually spoken about. You've never heard me speak about them, probably because they're just not very relevant, or it's just never come up in conversation. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. It might be interesting. So here we go. 10 years work anniversary, 10 years of work. I wasn't really sure what to call this episode. I think it will be 10 years of work anniversary or something like that. Now, technically, I actually had my first job when I was about 11, 12 years old, but I don't tend to count it. I mean, it's on my CV. It's on my LinkedIn. It's not on my CV. It's on my LinkedIn, listed as work experience. But I mean, technically, it's not. Like, it is and it isn't. So let me explain. I used to work in my dad's shop. My dad is a barber by trade. And as a kid, I mean, he's had this store probably like 30 odd years at this point. But back then, this was in the early 2000s. I would have been about 11 or 12 years old. And for 1 year, I worked in my dad's barbershop as a Saturday boy, Saturday assistant. And it was a very straightforward job. You know, I remember my dad kind of approaching me about it, like, hey, do you want to earn a bit of extra money on the weekend? And I was like, sure, you know, mostly because I just like the idea of spending more time with my dad, because I didn't often see him. So I thought, oh, this might be nice, work together, see him more. Obviously, I didn't realize quite how serious it would be. I mean, it's his life's work. So, you know, it's going to be taken very seriously from his end. And obviously, now I was introduced to not only dad the dad, but dad the father, but dad the manager. And that was different. And also I had to get used to other people sort of being points of authority. And we'll delve into some of these stories because I've got some interesting stories about this particular role. But the reason I wanted to bring this up is that it actually taught me a lot about work from a very young age. So I was not completely shocked when I got into my first official job many years later. And this actually happened before I even got work experience at school. Because as you may remember, in the UK, I don't know if they still do it, but typically you have a work experience period of about 2 weeks when you're about 14 or something. But this happened 2 years prior when I was about 11 or 12. So it started as a sort of Saturday job thing. I thought it was going to be a few hours, but it actually turned out to be a full day's work. I think it was like 8 to 5 or 9 to 5. But we inevitably would start earlier and prepare the shop and such and stay afterwards to close down. And it was hard work, physical work. You know, it sounds really easy, right? You know, you just sweep up hair and clean things. But I ended up doing a lot of things. I actually arranged client bookings because around this time, my dad's shop had always been like a walk-in service. You just walked in and sat down, as is the case with many barbershops. But in this instance, we were booking clients. I think my dad was trying something different then. And it was just a different way of doing things. I don't know necessarily that it was any more successful or not, because we still had walk-ins. But I remember they had to sit and wait, and the appointments would take precedence. And it was weird. I had to get used to calling people on the phone. I always got really nervous about that. And I sort of slowly developed a phone manner. So I suppose really early on, I was, becoming familiar with just telesales, but not actually telesales. But, I had like a phone manner already in a professional sense. And my memory of it was that I was very good at my job, even though it was very straightforward, just cleaning, brushing hair, talking to customers. I ended up washing clients' hair and stuff like that. And, I was good at listening. And I think that's why I stayed for as long as I did. I was there for a year. And I ended up working both days of the weekend after about 2 or 3 months. I seem to recall that I was working Saturdays and Sundays for a year, and I was all game for it. More money, more opportunities to work, and more time spent with my dad. It was just kind of win-win-win. And you met a lot of cool people. This was the early to mid 2000s. Average age of the clientele was ranging from probably like 15, 16 all the way up to late 30s. So you had a range of different people coming in, which was pretty cool. And also, I think my dad did this by design, but pretty much all the people that worked there were female. So I was in my element, a young boy surrounded by beautiful women cutting hair. I was like, this is great. And I'm getting paid for this. Fantastic. And then came the inevitable moment. I think I've told this story before, but I don't know if everyone's heard it. So here it is. This is the first and only time I've ever been fired. My dad fired me. Yeah. I'm sorry, Dad. Sorry to put you on blast, but here comes the story. Now, I don't know if it was a firing, but it was more one of those sad situations where my dad was just like, it's time to go home. But it was fair enough, and the weird thing was we never really properly spoke about it afterwards. But anyway, I'll get to that. Basically, there was a manager that worked there who eventually ended up getting fired. So I was right in thinking that this guy was a bit of a twat. But anyway, he worked for my dad, and seemingly he was quite good at his job, responsive and responsible and such. But in this particular industry, there's a lot of turnover because people aren't always trustworthy. I can't say the same for every store. I'm sure there's plenty of barbershops where this isn't the case. But the thing is, because you're dealing with a lot of young people, and, it's the sort of industry where you can kind of do it like self-employed, or you can do it working for your owner. There's always going to kind of be disputes over how many cuts you do, how much money you make, especially how much money you make. If you're working for an owner and there's like a discrepancy over how much you've made in a given day, you can see where the argument's going to come. You know what I mean? In the sense that, like, okay, I've worked for you for 9 hours today. I've done, I don't know, let's say 20 haircuts, and I've only made £50 from that, but you've pocketed 200. Not saying my dad ever did that. I'm just saying, in general, you can see where potential arguments would form. My dad was always fair with stuff like that and continues to be. But the problem with that is because he had a good nature. I think people used to sort of take advantage of that sometimes. So he had to be harder on these things as time progressed. And it's difficult, isn't it? Because you build a personal rapport with your staff, and you build relationships with these people over time because they're working for you for so long. But you have to keep that professional line. And I always think my dad was very good at doing that. But it was never easy, like having to let people go. And I could see that for him and such. And this, anyway, so this particular guy that was working for him, who he eventually later let go, I think a year or two later, was just like really on my case. And the problem was, there was this whole kind of toxic situation going on then, where everyone was very, they were very hard on me. in the sense that, I was this young boy with very low self-esteem who, was surrounded by these guys, and I needed support. I needed to I needed a confidence boost, but they would constantly berate me. And my dad, unfortunately, partook in that a little bit. And the idea was that they're building strength, you're trying to make you more manly. And it's like, it never worked. It was just mean. It was just really mean. But here's the difference. My dad, I can forgive that. He's my dad. A lot of people have relationships like that with their dads. And I knew my dad loved me and cared for me. Whereas this other guy, he's just a dick. And he was never nice. He was always on my case. And the setup for me getting fired is the perfect example of this, because to this day, as much as I take some responsibility for this, I don't take full responsibility for it. And you'll see why. So bear in mind, 11, 12 years old, very attentive. I've been there for a year, hardworking. Everyone likes me there. And there's a lot of trust built up. So anyway, I'm preparing a client's hair. I'm washing his hair, getting him ready for his haircut. And I believe my dad was going to take the haircut. While I'm doing this other manager who's supposed to be cutting hair, by the way, he's supposed to be paying attention. So he's talking to me whilst cutting this guy's hair, and I'm having to do two things at once as well. So we're both in the wrong in that we should both just be focusing on what we're doing. I should just be washing this guy's hair. He should be cutting the other guy's hair, right? So we're both in the wrong here. But the difference is he's an adult in charge. I'm a young kid who really at all times should be supervised. Yes, I was trustworthy and I knew what I was doing, but still more capacity for mistakes and ignorance. And it's forgivable because I'm a child. So yeah, I never thought about that actually, but yeah, he shouldn't have been talking and distracting people. So anyway, he keeps berating me about, or having a go at me because I haven't cleaned the bathroom yet. Now, it is important, but this bathroom was kind of like it was for staff. It could be for customers, but really it was like, if you're desperate, like it wasn't advertised, if that makes sense. Like if people say, hey, have you got a toilet? Then it would be like, yeah, we've got one. But it was in the back of the staff room, hidden away. And it was always clean. I always made an effort to clean it, but on the list of priorities, it was pretty low down there. The priorities were, get the products that we need every day, get people's lunches, clean up hair, keep the store tidy. That was probably the most important. And, book appointments, accept calls. Like I was doing a lot of different things. And this is what this guy was seemingly forgetting. But he was bullying me. That's what he was doing. And it was mean and unnecessary and really douchey when you consider that the guy was in his mid-20s to late 30s. And I was just a kid. I was like 11, 12 years old. So it was really unnecessary. But anyway, he's having a go at me. He's saying, oh, why have you not cleaned the bathroom yet? You really need to go and do this, blah, 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 blah. So I'm sort of half paying attention to washing this guy's hair now and just going, well, what do you mean? Like I have cleaned it, because I had actually cleaned it that day. But he's trying to push my buttons, trying to, just be a douchebag. And he did this all the time as well. This wasn't the first time. Now, here's the problem. As I've left the tap running, it's heated up very quickly, because these are really high power pressured wash basins. It's like a shower head essentially. So they heat up really quickly. So I turn away and all I hear is a, ah! And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And basically I've accidentally burnt this guy's head. It was really quick. It happened really suddenly. I immediately turned off the tap, and there was a steam cloud in front of me. And obviously my dad was very concerned. He wasn't angry per se, but he was like, what? Oh my God, what's happening? And then basically the guy that was berating me, I could see that there was a smirk on his face. Like he found it funny. Shows where people's priorities were, where my dad was being responsible adult and thinking about the customer and, what's important. The other guy's just like got a smirk on his face, like, ha ha ha, because he's a douche. So anyway, I was obviously really apologetic to the customer. I was really worried, shocked. You know, I've accidentally burnt this guy's head. Like, despite having burnt this guy's head, there wasn't any damage or anything. Don't worry, the guy was fine. He was really nice about it. And I think it's because, you know what? I was a kid, and you can forgive a kid for being ignorant and making a mistake. It's okay, because I was a kid. So I just want to drive home that point. I've never told this story, but you know, sometimes when you revisit stories, because I've got like a long-term memory, a very good long-term memory, but my short-term memory is terrible. But when I put my head into these stories and I remember them, I can remember. It's like I'm there. I can remember every single aspect of it, and it's weird being in this moment. And I suppose now it's different because I've got hindsight, and I can look at it as an adult and be like, that's unacceptable. You know, like, this is not right, and that's not right. And, you know, I look at it with very different lenses, and I look at the whole thing as just bullying, quite honestly. So anyway, I turned to my dad, and my dad very calmly explains that, you know, this is not acceptable. And he gives me a bit of money, and he tells me to take a cab home. And that was the end of me working for my dad. And I tried to explain this whole story to him, I think later that day, but his mind was made up on it. And fair enough, you know, it was fair. But I remember about a year or two later, when this other guy who distracted me and was the causal factor of me getting fired, finally got fired, I actually felt like that was the justice that was deserved. Like, and he got fired for something really bad. He got fired for, like, I think, dealing drugs outside the store or something, which on the grand totem pole of mistakes, that's up there. Very disrespectful. But yeah, just crazy times. It was a different time. I was just a kid. My dad looked after me very well in that position, and he had a really good staff. I don't want to make it sound like, you know, it was a bad environment. It was a very good environment. I learned a lot through doing that. And I just want to say, actually, Dad, if you're watching, thank you so much for the experience. I learned a lot through that. And I don't think that I would have been as prepared for my eventual first job if I hadn't have had that experience. One thing I want to add to that, actually, is I do recall coming home exhausted after those shops. I was going to say shops, then I was going to say streams. After those days of work. Because I wasn't used to doing that. You know, it felt much more intense than school. Like, school felt like easy by comparison, but I preferred work. It sucked, to be honest, because as much as those days were hard at work, receiving money, and I liked the feeling of having achieved something every day, having worked hard, and people went home happy. Like, we worked well together. We did, you know, we were a good team. And I worked, because my dad had two shops side by side, and I remember working in both of the shops, and working with different teams of people, and we had a good rapport, and everyone seemed to get on with me and such. And I think they were impressed with the way I was at the age I was, because normally the Saturday assistants would be a lot of years old, and there was a lot of trust in me, I think, I seem to recall, which was really cool. Just while my head is in this sphere, I seem to also recall that there was this, like, random lady that used to come to the store, and it's different times, man. So basically, she would come through with a big, massive bag, right? A nondescript, big, black kind of rucksack type bag that you would put over your shoulder. I think it's called a bag. I don't know. It looked dodgy as hell, but I was a kid, so I was like, "Oh, what's that?" And the people in the store would be like, "Shh." And don't worry, it was nothing too bad. But basically, she'd come through to the back, and she'd just throw this bag on the table, and basically there was loads of counterfeit DVDs, pirate DVDs, and we would just go through them and pick pirate DVDs that we wanted to watch, because this was back in the early 2000s, and pirate DVDs were pretty easy to come by, and you could get, like, stuff that was in the cinema quite easily, or stuff that was about to be released on DVD quite easily. And it was really hit and miss as to whether or not the DVDs would be good. Some of them terrible. You know, you'd have your classic people jumping up in the cinema, and the quality's rubbish, or it's dubbed in, I don't know, like Hindi or something. Like, it's just, like, completely non-watchable unless you're from, you know, you speak Hindi. or it was fairly decent, but like off colored or something, like discolored, like maybe it's a shade of green or blue where it should just be clear colors. But that was something that happened once or twice a month, I think. Really friendly lady, actually. And there was a few of those people going around that town doing that. But yeah, I don't even think those people. Are pirate DVDs still a thing? I think torrents have replaced that, really, haven't they? Do people still sell pirate DVDs? I don't suppose there's really a market for them anymore. Maybe there is. Maybe pirate Blu-ray. I don't know. But it was a different time. So that was my first ever. I suppose you could call it non-official job. I don't really know how else to call it, really. But I learned a lot from that experience. It was a good experience. I'm just going to briefly touch on work experience. So I did work experience for 2 weeks at a printing place in the same town that I had worked with my dad. And it sucked. I was about 14 at the time, but I came in with a good attitude. I was excited to work and to try something different. It was, an opportunity to be away from school for 2 weeks. So that was good because school was dull as arse for the most part. And I remember the first few days they gave me legitimate jobs. It was mostly just organizing and laminating files, greeting customers, which I was pretty good at because I'd done that previously. It was good. And then after a while, after maybe 3 or 4 days, I found myself just sitting at the desk behind one of these guys, not having anything to do. And this is how bizarre this situation was. I remember I came up to the main boss of the printing shop and I said, "Hey, is there nothing for me to do? Like, I'm just sitting in the corner doing nothing." And then he responded by saying, "Oh, well, I just saw you sitting there doing nothing, so I thought I'd just leave you there." And I'm like, "But I want to work. I want to do things." And he seemed to light up a little bit more after that, but it was like he was blaming me for the situation that he created. Because one thing I've never been is lazy. Even when I was a teenager and I had lackadaisical moments, anyone who knows me knows I'm a workaholic and I always have been. And I hate sitting around doing nothing. I detest it. I've always been like that. As much as it would be very easy to just sit there on my phone and just do nothing, I wanted to do stuff. I wanted to learn. I wanted to experience, be a part of the team. I don't know. So eventually I did get some more jobs, but it ended up just me and another person who was doing work experience from a different school, just being in the back office. And I think the rest of the staff were laughing at us because we were just organizing all these old paper files that probably hadn't been touched in like 5 years. It's the classic, I'll get them to do the job, but doesn't matter thing. And they kept telling us that it was important, but we both quickly realized like this isn't at all important. This is just like, it's just a way to get us out of the way. So overall, it was a pretty disappointing experience. But it was an experience. And there's some memories from it. Sorry, I can't give you more. My next work experience was a bit more interesting, actually, and a bit more on brand, I suppose, as far as everything that I do now. Just looking back in hindsight, I did work experience with a company called Network Distributing Limited, which was a subsidiary of Virgin, which I thought was really cool. Now, at the time, I was studying a BTEC business qualification, which people will laugh at. But back then it actually meant something. I'm sure it still does, but there's a lot of jokes and memes about it these days. But back then, this is like 2010, this particular BTEC qualification was for business. So we did loads of coursework. The whole thing was coursework based. And as part of it, we got to do work experience, which was pretty cool. And I think it's listed as a month here, but I think it was 2 weeks. Because LinkedIn doesn't let you do specifics. It just assumes you did a month or that's it. So yeah. And basically I assisted the video and editing department. It was split between 2 jobs. I remember I got passed from department to department, but the main stuff I did initially was I remember sitting and watching old videotapes and pointing out errors or glitches and such, and then reporting them to someone else. And basically, in a nutshell, what they were doing was digital restoration of old series from like the 50s, 60s, that kind of thing, and preparing them for DVD and stuff. So it was interesting stuff. And I started just sitting there kind of looking at the videos and, as I say, just highlighting the issues. And then there was a point where I was sitting in a room with a guy and we were reviewing how he would go about fixing those issues, which was interesting. And then the final thing I ended up doing was like paperwork. And I remember like someone getting annoyed at me because I hadn't had the time to do this job that they wanted. Even like, I know it's like, oh, get the work experience person to do the job because then I don't have to do it, kind of thing. But I was genuinely busy doing other things. Like they were asking me to do a lot of things. But that was fine. And overall, it was a good experience. They were happy with me. So much so that my main boss actually arranged for us to have a curry, as in like the whole place to have whole work crew to have a curry together at a really nice place. I think it was in Kensington, somewhere like that, Kensington Olympia. Yeah, wow, my memory is pretty good long term. I can't believe that. Yeah, the place was called Kensington Olympia, and I'd been there for like school trips before for some reason. I think there might be a museum near there or something. But yeah, we had a really nice curry and he celebrated my work experience there and said that I did a really good job. And I was really proud of myself when I went back with having learned something. So that was a good work experience. So thank you very much for that. Now, the next job, I mean, it's not really a job, but I count it. So screw it. When I was in sixth form, I also did supervisory stuff. I was like a classroom assistant for the younger years of business classes, because I had done business for about 4 or 5 years at this point. So I'd done business at GCSE level and I'd aced it. I got the highest marks possible. It wasn't just me. There was a few others that did as well. One of which being Akshay Thakrar, who's on The Apprentice right now. So that's very cool. And then we eventually went to A-levels and did the A-level equivalent of the course. And during our sixth form years, there was like a scheme that I think everyone in sixth form had to take part in, which was, it was considered extracurricular, and you had to help younger years with their classes. And it was a natural kind of link to put me with the business students. And I'm actually remember helping people. It was actually quite cool. Like, it was funny because you'd end up talking about things and, you know, you get distracted. But for the most part, I was good at helping people. And people seemed to learn from me. So that was cool. And there was weird instances where the teacher would leave and then I'd end up supervising the class. Bear in mind, I was like 16, 17. So I guess I was able to, but it felt weird trying to supervise people that were only like 2 years younger than me. But I don't know, they seemed to listen. So that was cool. And I did that for about 9 months. And that was it really. Then I finished sixth form. And here's where things start to order. This was, I'll go with this one first because it was just very strange. So I'm a trained steward. I have a, it feels silly saying this, I have a BTEC Level 2 award in understanding stewarding at spectator events. It was awarded by a company that doesn't exist anymore. I mean, it was 10 years ago, 11 years ago. But when I finished sixth form, I wasn't sure about going to university straight away. I felt, can you believe this? I thought I wasn't intelligent enough to go to university. Imagine that. I mean, I've had jokes with friends about this before, but some of the stupidest people I've ever met in my life, I've met at university. So I find it hilarious in hindsight that I thought I wasn't intelligent enough, but it speaks to self-esteem issues. You know, if you have low self-esteem, it prevents you from doing the things that you can and should do. So believe in yourself. And if you don't believe in yourself, just try. Just try. You know, if it feels right and it feels like something you should be doing, just go for it. You know, you never know what could happen. But anyway, because of that, my mum was very quick to be like, hey, you need to get a job. You need to, you know, start working, start paying your way. And I was like, all right, fair enough. I didn't accept it that fair enough, Lee, but I did do something about it. I did actually try to find work, and I found work pretty quickly. But before I got my first job, I actually went for this stewarding qualification, and it was supposed to be like I suppose on a casual basis. I remember I had to go to the Oval Cricket Ground in London to do my training. So it's pretty cool. We got to go to the stadium, and it was huge. We got to mess around a little bit. But mostly it was just sitting in a classroom, listening to this guy teaching us. And it was interesting stuff, you know. It was just learning, you know what I mean? So it was just more school as far as I was concerned. So I just sat there with a notebook. But the difference was, instead of being in a classroom full of people my age, it was in a classroom full of people, you know, in their 20s, 30s, 40s, which was really weird. And I remember doing health training. Like I learned how to do like CPR and all that, which apparently is out of date. So I need to get that updated. But I could probably save your life because I remember how to do it. Anyway, one thing that really stands out, or two things stand out from that experience. One is that some of the guys who were older than me in their 20s and 30s were running around like kids, and I was obviously like enjoying that and having a laugh, but I also remembered the fact that they were like 10 years older than me, and I was like, so we don't act like adults then? And the course tutor picked up on that, because there were people that kept talking. You know, it was literally like school. It was so silly. There was people that kept talking during the lessons, and he had to like tell them off. And that's fine when you're at school, and it's a bit embarrassing in sixth form, to be honest, or college. But this was like telling off grown adults in their 30s, 40s to stop talking. And like, he had to, oh, it was so embarrassing. And like, even me, like 18 at the time, I was just looking at them like, what are you doing? Like, what? So yeah, but I think the lasting impression I have of that experience is that I never used it. You know, they gave us information about how to do events, and I was interested in doing it, but it inevitably never happened. So I had this qualification that I never used, and probably now is defunct. I doubt I could use it. Maybe I could have a top up. Maybe I could still be a steward. For those who don't know what it is, I would have basically just been one of those people that wears the fluorescent jackets and basically, you know, the overalls, basically just stands at like football grounds and just tells people where to go and stuff. I don't know. Would have been easy money, probably quite an easy job, but yeah, never really happened. And around the same time, I did a qualification, which I don't even think it's a real thing. I did an Itq course. It was officially an information technology internship for like a really shady, dodgy company that I think they either still exist or they went into administration. I can't remember. I never actually officially received my qualification, even though I completed it. But one of the things I remember straight off the bat is in the first week, I learned that at least two of the people in the class had recently come out of prison, and they were my age. They were nice, but that was a bit nerve-wracking to know. And also after the first day, literally 50% of the people left and never came back. Because I think they were smart enough to realize this is a crock of shit. What are we doing? But I was there like, well, no, I'm going to get this qualification. I'm going to do this thing, you know, because they were paying me. So hell yeah. But it was really weird. I remember there was a very lackadaisical teacher who really didn't care. And then there was one that did sort of care. And they were teaching us, I guess, IT stuff. I can't really remember, if I'm honest. But I just remember that the whole point of it was that they were going to help us get this qualification and then help us get work. That was the point of doing it. And they didn't do either of those things. I didn't get the qualification. I never received it. And I inquired and I never received it. And I never got a job. And I remember that the particular office that I went to was very lazy in response. But then they had another office in like Hammersmith, which was in London, which was really strict. And it seemed like, oh, they get stuff done here. And I remember sitting down in a boardroom. It was really nerve-wracking. just talking to these people and telling them what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go with my career. I mean, I didn't know what I wanted at 18, come on. But, I gave them an idea, like I want to work in business. I want to do this because I liked business. I was excited by business. I'm still excited by business, but it's just different now. I'm a creative business entrepreneur, I suppose. But back then I was just like, I want to be a businessman. I want to do something. I don't know. I just didn't know what I wanted to do, as most people don't at the age of 18. But there you go. So I kind of just didn't get anything out of it really, and it kind of just ended like a fart, a very disappointing fart. And that was kind of it really. And then not long after that, I think a month or two afterwards, literally a month later, I started my job working at a supermarket for 3 years. I've spoken about this before. I have many stories on this, which I'm sure I could share in a specific episode. But let's give you the Cliff Notes version. So I got this job. Originally, I was going to go for like a part-time position, but I was offered full-time, and I was like, I just jumped at the opportunity. Should have thought that through, really. I should have gone part-time and just did overtime. But, back then I was like, I need to get work. I need to pay rent. I need to do this. So I was a bit scared. I didn't know what to expect. So lesson learned, don't be scared, plan things out. So anyway, got this position, which was about an hour and a half away from where I lived by train, which again was a mistake, but I would find this out later. And at the time I was in a heavy metal band. So I was working in this place 5 days a week with alternating days, which meant that, I'd have one weekend off, and then the next week I'd have like a day off during the week, and then I'd work the Saturday and have the Sunday off. Sunday was always the best day to work because it was double pay, but the full-timers never got that. But one thing we did get is that, which I think everyone got, is this cool thing where you could work your bank holidays, get time and a half, and then save them up, because obviously legally you're allowed to claim them. So if we wanted to say, no, we're not going to work, we didn't have to work. But we were technically open. And I would save them up and get like an extra week holiday. So this is pretty awesome. And during that time, I worked through the Olympic period when the Olympics came to London. A lot happened during that time. I was in a long-term relationship for about 3 years, which ended during my time there. It was also during that time that my band ended after 3 years. And then I didn't know what to do with myself because I'd just been dumped and my band had ended and everything seemingly was going down the toilet. But I'd started this college course because I had this intention of going back to university. Funny story about the college course. So I paid like $2 or $3 grand to do this college course because one year I'd phoned a university in Clearing and had said, oh, hey, so I have these qualifications. Can I get into university? I had A star, D, 2 A stars in business and like a D in psychology. And they said that the D in psychology was not good enough and I'd have to do this particular course, which they suggested, in order to get into university. That was rubbish, and I'll get to why in a second. But I took their advice and I did this course, and I got about 3 months into the course, because obviously during the course of the course, they give you advice about how to get into university. And there's this whole part of the course where they help you get into that. And so during that time, I was calling different universities and applying for different universities through UCAS. And I called my eventual university, Royal Holloway University, and I'd said to them, hey, so these are my grades, and then this is my predicted grades for the course I'm currently doing. And they said, oh, based on your grades from A-level, you're a sure bet you're in already. And I was like, wait, what? And then I literally remember making the connection. I was like, hang on. There's this lady at the end of the phone. I was like, so you're telling me that this course that I'm doing right now, I don't need to do. I don't need to finish this course. And she said, well, I just started backpedaling and saying, well, I mean, you should probably still finish the course. It's good for your personal development. But basically, yes, basically the course was pointless. And I just laughed. And it took so much weight and pressure off me to know that I was definitely going to get into this university and that things were going to be okay. And just bringing it back to work, I had dropped to part-time during that time. So it kind of was a big relief because I didn't like working there, and it had got a lot better when I'd gone part-time compared to full-time, because I hated it when I was full-time. But at least when I was full-time, I had the band going on. I had something in my life. I had a relationship. I had things going on in my life, but I was so miserable. And the only person that could change it was me, but I felt trapped, to be honest. Whereas when I went part-time, I felt like I had a lot more control over my life. And I ended up working more, actually, funnily enough, because I did loads of overtime, but it was on my terms. And that was the first time that I realized that work can be on your terms. And when it is, it's often more enjoyable, which is one of the reasons why I'm now freelance. I work as a freelancer. And I think that's like a really important thing to keep in mind, is this idea that, you don't have to just go for like your standard 9 to 5 or shift work. Like there are contracts, there are freelance options. You can work as a subcontractor. That's what I do. There's a lot of different options. You've always got options. You just have to go and explore and not be scared or worried about what, or feel like you're backed into a corner and you've got no escape, because you have got an escape. But bear in mind, I was 20 years old and scared and worried and didn't know what I was doing. So that in a nutshell was kind of how it was when I was at this supermarket. As I say, I think what might be a good idea off the back of this episode is, if you have any questions for me after this episode, send them my way and I will do like an episode where I just answer your questions based on everything I've spoken about. I think that's a good idea, because I don't know what to focus on. I share stories here and there that I feel are relevant or, that come to mind. Obviously, some of the stuff I've already spoken about, I've never spoken about before, so you've never heard those stories. But I think a lot of people in my community have heard me talk about my time at working at Waitrose, the supermarket. So I don't know, I don't want to repeat myself or talk about things that might not be interesting. So yeah, feel free to ask me questions about that or anything else that I've spoken about in this episode. And we'll do a sort of a Q&A episode after the fact. And I think that will work quite nicely. I will talk about a couple of things now, though, in this supermarket job. So I did try to go for like a team leader position. I worked very hard. Bear in mind, I was like 18, 19, 20 during my time there. I left just as I turned 21. It was an awesome year. I quit my job. I finished college and I started university, and I went to America and toured around England with my friend who was in a band. It was a good year. It started terribly with a breakup, and it ended with me partying in Prague for New Year's. So I think that shows you just how much can change in a year. But yeah, it was a job where I remember when I first started the job, about 3 months in, there was a South African lady that was working there. And I think she was in her 40s or something. Really nice lady. She worked on the wines section of the store, and she knew a lot about wines, obviously being a wine specialist. But really nice lady, smart lady. And obviously, being that I was younger, the adults, older people in the store would give me advice, or they would be shit stirrers. There was a lot of shit stirrers, but she was one of the good ones. And one of the first things she said, which was a life lesson, she turned around to me and she said, "You need to stop working so hard." And I took that badly, because I've got that classic, work hard mentality. And, I'm not lazy. What do you mean? I'm going to work my butt off. And, I guess you must just be one of the lazy ones. I didn't say that, but that was kind of my attitude, right? And she said, "You're going to burn out. And if you set the bar too high, basically you'll never be able to meet that. Like they'll expect you to meet that high expectation every single time. And she was right. Basically, in a nutshell, the lesson there was you should work hard for other people, but bear in mind that, you know, whatever is the first thing that you set as like how you work when you come into a place, that's how they expect you to work at all times. The way I've learned it is to kind of go into every job now, get your work done, get your work finished in a timely fashion, like do your job, but like don't overexert yourself. Don't kind of go above and beyond. Choose your moments when you do that. So you can go above and beyond, but don't do it every second of every day. Do it at opportune moments when you know they're watching, or, you know, stuff like that. That's how you do it. That's strategic. A lot of people are going to disagree with me on that. And look, the thing is, this comes from experience. I've grinded in jobs, both corporate and customer service, and it got me nowhere. It just meant that I was burnt out, exhausted, and I quit ultimately. And that's the wrong way to go about things. Like, as harsh as it sounds, a lot of the time, hard work is not what gets you positions or opportunities. It's more about your mindset, your attitude, how well you play with others, you know, your politics, you know, how well you play the game. Like, it sounds stupid, but more often than not, that's the case. And this was definitely the case, as ridiculous as it sounds, in this supermarket job. It was like, there shouldn't have been any politics. It should have just been stack the shelves, get on with your job, here's a promotion, you've worked hard. That's how it should have been. But it was like, I kept getting promised this team leader position, and it kept getting passed over. And sometimes they would just tell me, yeah, it's coming. We're going to put you on the course. We're going to put you on the course. Then they'd throw it back in my face and say, I've not worked hard enough, even though I'd trained a bunch of people. And I'd often took responsibility and was like supervising anyway, in like when managers weren't around. That's the thing. Like, they treat you as a manager, but then they don't give you what you want. And I had a bad attitude back then because, you know, I'd busted my ass for so long. And going back to what that woman had said, after 6 months, I actually turned around to her and said, yeah, you were right. You know, you were spot on with that. And she laughed, and we had a laugh about it. And but it was kind of like a bittersweet laugh. It was like, yeah, you're right, but it sucks that you're right, is kind of thing. And she understood, and, you know, it was just a life lesson straight away. And I remember just kind of being frustrated, you know, having people come in. I remember towards the end, before I quit, about maybe 6 months before I quit, there was a guy that came in who I trained, and then he started trying to supervise me. And I was like, what is this bullshit? Like, what? Because you've just chosen him, suddenly he's my boss. Like, I was like insulted by that, you know, because I'd shown again and again and again that I was definitely like management material, and I was definitely worthy of being a team leader. It's just they didn't want to give it to me because they didn't like me. Because, you know what, I did say what I thought, and I was outspoken, and maybe I did challenge managers, not like in a annoying way, like, you know, I'm not going to get the job done, but in a like, no, you can't be rude to me, no, you can't be a dick to me. Like, I would call people out on their bullshit because that's how I was raised. My mum would have been proud of me in those situations, because a lot of it was bullying and just nasty managers. And, you know, not everyone. There's a lot of people that I worked for that were very decent people, and I stand by that to this day. But there was a lot of people that made my life a living nightmare. In particular, like, there was a few managers that just made me miserable. And like, it was the sort of thing where, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, where you come into work and based on whoever is the manager, that decides how your day is going to be. And that's the thing. We haven't even spoken about customers, but like, the management ultimately were the thing that made the job unbearable. Because the customers, you know what, like, for the most part, they were fine. You get a few rude people here and there, you know, but you're a team. You know what I mean? Like, you're in it together, so you don't really notice. Like, if you get a rude customer, you can just laugh about it with another member of staff, and it's okay. You know, it didn't faze me too much. there were times when they'd sometimes treat you like, you're stupid, and, treat you like you're just a piece of dirt on the floor. And that got even worse when I got into hospitality. But when I was working in the supermarket, you know what? It wasn't that bad. It really wasn't. It was just kind of like, I had bigger problems dealing with these managers. But I remember later on, certain managers came into like higher managers came into the store, and they told me I didn't have the right attitude. And I remember telling them, why do you think I have this attitude? It's because you keep promising me things and then lying to me and then giving it to someone else or giving it to no one. That's the problem. I can take it if you say I'm not good enough and you say these are the things you need to do in order to get good enough, fair enough. But they weren't saying that. They were just like, oh, your attitude's wrong. And it's like, well, of course my attitude is bad because you keep lying to me. You keep telling me that I've got an opportunity and then you pull the rug from under my feet. Remember what I said earlier about remembering how it was? I'm there right now. I'm there and I'm getting annoyed. I'm just like, ugh. I could go on all day about my time at Waitrose, the supermarket. And as I say, if you have questions, if you have ideas, things you want me to talk about, let me know. But ultimately, if I had to sum it up, because I need to just kind of give a rough idea of each role and what it taught me. Supermarket taught me it reinforced how I dealt with customers, because while I had that experience in that Saturday job I'd done before, this was the first job I'd ever had with a contract. That's something very important to mention, actually. First job with a contract, pension even. There were bonuses that I got every year. That was a very cool scheme that I don't believe Waitrose does anymore, but Waitrose and John Lewis used to have like a bonus scheme. So you get like extra money every April. So instead of like $1,000, you'd have like $3,000 in a month. It was insane. I actually used the money in my final year to go to America. So thank you, Waitrose, for that. Got to go to America because of you. But yeah, it was, I think overall it was a good job. It taught me how to deal with customers in the right way, which, I carried those techniques into other customer service positions. So, I learned a lot from them. I learned patience. I could probably count on my fingers how many times I lost it at customers. Inevitably, you're going to lose it sometimes when people are that rude and disgusting and just horrible. But I think maybe like 3 times I lost it. I lost it more at my managers, to be honest. But the good thing is, like, people were very forgiving as well. So long as you work hard, I think that's kind of what people respond to the most. They don't like laziness. And I was never lazy. I was always hard working, never lazy. Because I couldn't be. It was not in me to be lazy. I had moments where I was disillusioned and annoyed and frustrated at the structure of things, but I was never lazy. Another life lesson that I learned probably in the first month of working there was that there was a manager that at the time he would have been a supervisor, but eventually he was an assistant manager, and he was closer in age to me, and I thought he was trustworthy, but he turned out not so much to be. But he turned around to me once and he said, and it was the weird sort of thing where he was giving me this advice, but you could tell he was like protecting himself as well. He basically, because I think he was telling me because I was young, he turned around to me and he said, always watch your back. And what he meant by that is, like, everything that you do, make sure everything that you do is okay. And you've covered your tracks and you've made sure that you're in charge and owning everything you're doing. Like you have a good track record. Like everything that you do is good. You see what I'm saying? Like you make sure that you're fully just in charge of everything. So I'm losing my words here. Basically, everything that you do looks good, and that you're never caught slacking. Basically, that's kind of in a nutshell what he was saying, and that was a useful bit of advice. And it was funny because later on, I remember that guy. I remember when he told me that, it sounded very ominous. Like, I guess I need to be careful around this guy. Like, that advice is useful, but this, it sounds like he could potentially be quite a combative guy. And funnily enough, about 2 years later, he got someone fired. Someone apparently he'd known for many years at this point. this person had done something wrong. I think they stole something from the store or something, which is not acceptable. But he snitched on this person. He got them fired, and he threw them under the bus. And he was a manager at that point. And I just thought, like, it's like, I know how ridiculous this sounds in the context of a supermarket, but power corrupts absolutely. It was literally that kind of mindset. It's like, okay, he's got a bit of power now, it's gone to his head, and now he's throwing anyone under the bus to save his own skin, to make himself look good. I don't think you can ever look good snitching on other people. I just, and it wasn't even, he did it twice. He got another guy fired, who, there was this stupid thing at Waitrose, where, and other supermarkets do this too. I don't think they do this anymore, but at the time, they would tell you that you weren't allowed to take food that was being thrown away. So bear in mind, you had to waste food off, count it as losses that was like going out of date or something like that, and throw it away. But they told you that once it was to be thrown away, you couldn't take it for yourself, even though it's been written off and it's just going in the bin, right? They would say, no, you're not allowed to take it. And this guy, I think he took some like lettuce or something to give to like some turtles that he had as pets at home, and he got fired for that. And this was a guy in like his 60s or something. And that manager that I told you about got this guy fired, and I was just shocked by that. I was really blown away. Like, why would you do that? Like, there are certain things that you can't turn a blind eye away from, like things that are genuinely illegal. Like if you see abuse or someone get assaulted or something, like, yeah, report that shit. Do something about it. But when someone's like taking a bit of food that is going to be thrown away anyway, come on, man. That's, you know what I mean? It's just like a really douchey thing to do. Yeah, there was a lot of crazy stuff that happened there, but I think it set the template for me working in future customer service positions, and also just understanding work, politics, people at work, the good and the bad, what to avoid, how to work, I think, in a nutshell. So it was a good experience, but it was hard, and I wouldn't want to do it again. Now, during my time at university, I had a lot of job roles, both inside university and outside university. I'll skim through some of these. So I worked in a hotel for about 5 months before. Not many people know this. So I actually worked in 2 hotels. The first hotel I worked in, I was only there for 5 months. I thought I was there for less time than that, apparently. But yeah, 5 months. Okay. And it was a very straightforward job. I was only there like once or twice a week, normally just once a week for like 3-4 hours in the morning to do like the breakfast serving and laying of the tables for the afternoon tea services and such. And it was a very posh, swanky hotel. I think the building was like 15th, 16th century building, like very, like an estate. You can imagine, like, really posh gardens, very posh place. Because there's very posh areas in Egham, which is where my university was, which is where all of these hotels were, or are, I should say. And I mean, there was one manager or supervisor, I should say, that I had some falling out with. Again, if you want to know more about that, I can cover that in a follow-up episode. So I'm gonna skip that. But what I will say, there was one weird thing about the way that you'd get paid. Like normally I'd get paid with just standard pay slips. Like just, I don't know, I'd either write my hours somewhere or on like a slip, or they would be inserted into like pre-agreed via email or something like that. But this place, you had to do like a time card, I think. So you had to sign the card and then put it into just like a tiny little attachment on the side of a wall. And I thought, this isn't secure enough. How am I ever going to get paid properly? But you know what? I got paid correctly every single time. So apparently that system works and works perfectly. And I wouldn't be surprised if they're still using it. And I was working on a casual basis, which I think when you're at university, definitely go for that. It's maximum flexibility. The contract, you don't even really owe anything. I mean, the danger is that you are never promised hours, but the kind of the flip side of that is you don't have to work either. So it's quite a flexible position to have. And I think the more you show up, the more they'll use you, really, in a positive way. And other than that manager that I mentioned, she wasn't even a manager, she was a supervisor. Other than the supervisor being a douche, everyone there was really nice. And I ended up meeting a lot of them in the next hotel job I had, because they'd left that place. But yeah, it was an okay place to work for the most part. Nice kitchen staff, really good food that they did there, and met some interesting people as well. I very briefly worked at Brunel University, which was funny because I have a family member that works there, so that's how I was able to get the in. So, nepotism. No, just kidding. I got like a little. I'll explain the positions in a second, but basically, it was funny going back there when they refused me in clearing, and I went to a better university anyway. I was at university at Royal Holloway when I did this, like, I suppose you could call it like internship or whatever at Brunel. So that made me laugh. I was like, well, I'm at somewhere better now. So no, but this experience was pretty good. I was there for 2 months in the build up to their graduation week in 2015. I worked as an usher at their graduation, so that was pretty cool. I helped with student records, like printing of student records, fixing student records. I used various different computer programs that I can't remember how to use now. But it was mostly just for certificate stuff and just helping out in the office and making people tea. So that was cool. Also, I got to work with my mum, which was cool. I'd never worked with my mum before, although I didn't work closely with her. We worked separately, but it was cool still to work with my mum. That was cool. I did a very brief internship at Samsonite, and it was a marketing internship, so I was very excited about it. But unfortunately, it's always been kind of dampened by a bad experience that I have to mention. So basically, I got this through a family friend, and it seemed like a really promising experience. I was excited to finally get an internship in the field that I was going into, because I was studying management with marketing at university. So I got an internship at the headquarters of this company. Great, right? It ticks all the boxes. Now, before I was about to start this, I came back to England after having been in Estonia with my then girlfriend for like a month during summer. And I came to start this internship. And on the day that I arrived back in England, I received a call that one of my great grandma had passed away. And I was obviously like really sad about that. And my dad said, "Hey, do you want to go?" Well, no, he said, "Will you accompany me to the funeral and we'll make a sort of a road trip of it, because it would take like 3 hours to get there or something." And we did it, and it was a good experience. We got to see family, got to say goodbye to my great grandma. It was a good experience all round. Now, the reason that that's relevant is that I was supposed to start this this internship on like a Monday, but I was going to go to this funeral. Now, I didn't expect this to be a problem because it's a bereavement. And okay, I've not actually started with this company, but I didn't expect a bereavement to be an issue. I thought, if I call them and say, "Hey, so basically this is what's happening. I've had a family member pass, so I won't be able to start straight away." I didn't think that would be an issue. But what I was met with was the person on the other end of the phone, who was a marketing manager at the time, telling me, she was the partner of the family friend who had helped me get this position, basically. She basically just turned around to me and said, "Oh, this is unprofessional. This is really unprofessional. You can't be acting like this. You should have started on this day." And I was like, "I've just had someone die. Like, are you kidding me?" And I was like, "Look, I will start on this date and I'll see you then." And they sort of begrudgingly said yes. And then when I started the internship, I turn up, and I'm sat down with this woman for about an hour, and she's basically telling me that, firstly, because I don't actually work for the company as a full-time employee, bereavement apparently doesn't count. Like, it's a good thing I'm not naming this person and shaming them, but, you know, if you are watching this, I hope you do realize, like, just how sickening your behavior was, like, just unprofessional and distasteful. You know, forget unprofessionality, it was just distasteful behavior. And I really hope that they learned from that and just don't treat anyone else like this, because this was sickening. So basically, I'm in this room sitting down and I'm getting lectured about how, you know, the bereavement doesn't count because I don't work there as a full-time employee. If I worked there as a full-time employee, it would be understood. So apparently that's just horse shit, isn't it? And then they said, you know, it's really unprofessional. Like, I should have started on time, but I started 2 days later and that causes problems. And it's like, I was just listening to all of this. And then eventually she stopped and I said, yeah, okay, look, I'm sorry. Even though I didn't mean that, because someone's just died in my family. And I literally turned around to her at one point and I said, are you being serious? Like, my great grandma just died and you're telling me that it's unprofessional to, like, start this internship like 2 days later. Oh my God, it just riles me up even thinking about it. And then we sort of just agreed to, like, continue or whatever. And then right at the end, just as I'm about to leave the office, she turns around and she says, "Oh, and Christian, sorry about your gran," in the most insincere way possible. And I could just picture it to this day. And I'm just like, I can't believe this person. And the funny thing is, after that internship ended, because it was really disappointing, the only thing that was really worth doing during the internship was I got to sit in and hear some, like, branding meetings with the head of marketing and someone who was working in connection with the company from a different company that, like, recently just merged. So that was interesting from a marketing perspective. And I took notes and stuff. But most of the time I was just sitting there doing data entry, which I expected to do a little bit of that stuff. But ultimately, I didn't get to do anything marketing related. It was just a waste of time and a disappointing experience, and left a sour taste in my mouth because of that really unprofessional meeting I'd had with that person. But what can you do? Like, what can you really do? So moving on, I was a Christmas temp at TK Maxx, although I didn't actually work Christmas. I quit before Christmas. I had too much going on in my personal life to do it. But, and also I just wanted a better job, to be honest. It was okay. There's not really much to say. I got up really early in the morning. I walked to work, which took me about 35 minutes. I must have been insane. I don't know why I just didn't get the bus, but I guess I was trying to save money. Really early in the morning, doing stock replenishment. All the staff were fine, you know, very kind of just relaxed environment, very different to my time at Waitrose. It was relaxed to the point that I don't know, like, it was almost too relaxed, to be honest. But, you know, it was fine. You know, there's really not much else to say, to be honest. The only thing that sticks out, actually, was they had a punching in system, because it's an American company. TK Maxx is the English version of TJ Maxx, I believe, is the American company. So they have this punching in hand scan system that they have. It's like a thing that's, or like a system box that's outside of the staff room. And you're supposed to basically punch in and punch out by scanning your hand to indicate when your breaks start, end, when your shift starts, ends. But people obviously forget and stuff. But it was like a really weird way of getting paid. And I'm not sure that I even did it correctly. But yeah, that's something that stands out from that time. Lots of students working there, as you'd expect. It was a student town quite close to where my uni was. And it only lasted about 3 months, and I stopped before Christmas. So there you go. I very briefly worked as a senior contributor to Give Me Sport, and I wrote opinion pieces and speculative pieces. I can't even speak properly. Been speaking for an hour and 17 minutes, so that's probably why. But yeah, I wrote opinion pieces and articles for Give Me Sport on professional wrestling. So that was a lot of fun. Some of my articles got a decent amount of views and interactions, so that was pretty cool. And that was kind of it with regards to that job. Very short-lived. I worked as a kitchen porter or dishwasher for 6 months at a pub. And that was probably one of the best jobs I ever had, to be honest. It was only about 3 or 4 hours of work. I'd come in, I'd get free food. I just washed the dishes, cleaned the surfaces, occasionally prepared like some salads, and I mopped the floor before I was done. And that was it. Brilliant job. Across the road from my university, so not far. I still found time to moan about that position. I think I was just, at that point, I was just getting lazy, which I know I said I was hardworking, but bear in mind, I was at university working several jobs. I was getting a bit like, you know. But, you know, it was a very easy job. The people were fine, nice people. And it was a pub, nice, friendly environment, easy money, easy job. So, yeah, sometimes it'd be like that. One of the jobs I had at university, working for the university, because I'd often have uni jobs and then jobs outside of the uni at the same time, mostly because the uni jobs didn't happen every week. They happened kind of sporadically. So I was a alumni fund cooler. So basically I would call up alumni of the university and ask them for money. Basically, to give you some context, I would ask for donations, usually from existing people who were donating to the university, and that money would be used to support services of the university in like for the curriculum. So for students helping students, essentially, or former students helping students. It was pretty nerve-wracking. I was calling a lot of different people. I had quite nice conversations with people. I also gave them information about upcoming events. So I'd be like, oh, did you know that the 1970s reunion is happening soon? It'd be like that kind of thing. And it was cool. Yeah, it was a good little position. I liked my boss. She was really nice. I think I had to just end it prematurely after about 1 year and 3 months because I was just getting busier and busier with second or third year. But yeah, just a good job all round, really. I very briefly I worked as an IT support assistant for like a week during freshers of second year. And I had like stools, if you could call it that, like a table with IT assistant. And people would just come up to me and mostly just ask me like, what's the Wi-Fi password? Or like, how do I get onto the Wi-Fi? That's mostly what people asked me. Gave them advice, gave them free sweets. And that was it. And I got paid for that, if you can believe that. And I think I got like points for that or something, like there was some sort of scheme that they called it a passport award scheme. And I got an award for it. And it was for extracurricular activities. And I would mostly collect points from my work, which I'm going to go on to as a student ambassador, as a fund cooler, and anything else that I did that was helping the uni in some way. For 2 years and 9 months, almost 3 years, so my whole time at university, I was a student ambassador for Royal Holloway University and the management department. I helped construct and promote a buddy scheme for new students, like people adjusting to university life in their first month. So that's pretty cool. Gave information and advice to parents and students. I remember showing around potential students who later then actually joined the university. So that was cool. Because I went out of my way. I'd give people the tour, and then sometimes there wouldn't be enough time to show them around, and I'd offer to show them around afterwards anyway. And then they came to the uni afterwards. So that was cool. But yeah, mostly I just helped out on these open days, really helped them. You know, I'd be in the assemblies. I'd be there mostly giving tours, giving advice. There was a few times in the later years where I actually did like lectures, talks on why it was a good idea to join the university and our management department. And that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that. It was very nerve-wracking, but I seemed to be good at it. They treated us very well. We got paid well. And it was just nice to be part of something. It was nice to represent the university in that way. And I was really proud during that time of that. Like, I got a lot of opportunities representing the university and representing the School of Management and such. And it was a good thing to be a part of, and I was very proud of that. And there was a good team of people that we worked with, so it was good stuff. Good stuff. One of the main events, my time at the I won't say the name of the place, but there was a hotel that I worked for about 1 year and 5 months. And during that time, I worked as a waiter, a bartender, events assistant. I did silver service. I did catering, helped out in the kitchens. I worked in an a la carte restaurant. I worked in the buffet restaurant. I worked in the lounge. I did it all. Same in this is one thing I didn't mention about the supermarket job. I was trained in all areas of the supermarket. And it's the same with this job. I was trained in all areas of the hotel, mostly, with the exception of, I think, the spa and places like that. But all the food serving, drink serving areas. I have to say, working as a waiter was very hard work, very thankless. The staff there were brilliant. Really, really good staff. Very good team. Very well run place. There were times it wasn't so good, but that's just the state with any place. I left with a good taste in my mouth after this position. I'll always sing the praises of this particular hotel because they were really good to me. They gave me work when I desperately needed it. Let's shout them out. The Runnymede Hotel, Runnymede on Thames Hotel in Egham. If you're ever there, go check it out. It's an excellent hotel. They really treated me well. If you're studying at Royal Holloway University, I'd recommend getting a job there just on a casual basis. They'll look after you. They'll give you work. They'll give you opportunities. As I say, I got to work in every single part of the hotel, and they treated me like a full-time member of staff because I actually ended up working like 50, 60-hour weeks on top of my degree. And after I finished as well, they treated me like a full-time member of staff. And I was always really grateful for that, like not to be treated differently. They were always really respectful and very giving and forgiving as well. As I say, the time spent as a waiter was very hard dealing with customers. It was kind of a flip reverse of Waitrose. So instead of the managers being the problem, it was the customers that were the problem often. And that was the challenge. But again, good team. So we worked together and we were able to deal with that quite easily. But the actual part of it that I really enjoyed was being the bartender. I loved being a bartender. I was in my element. I would be a bartender again. That's how much I loved it. It was the one customer service job that I truly enjoyed. It was fun, fast paced. You get a weird level of respect from people as well. Like people seem to treat you differently based on that. Like they weirdly show you respect as though bartenders deserve more respect or something. I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying I think it's based on your level of knowledge, because I think there seems to be this perception that people in the service industry are not intelligent, which is a lie. That's nonsense. But and also, if you think it's so easy, try it for yourself, because I guarantee most people that judge customer service staff, if you did that job for even a week, you would fall down and just cry, because it's a very hard, thankless job. And you've got to be very strong in every sense of the word, like physically, mentally, emotionally, because it's really taxing. It really is. And you deal with a lot of frustrating situations, a lot of pressing moments, pressure. You can't get scared or worried when things get really busy. You just have to keep your nerve. That's why they always say in the job descriptions of customer service jobs, it always says deals well with pressure. What they mean is pressure from your managers, pressure from the customers, pressure from the situation of being in a packed place that's got like 500 people and you're understaffed. You know, like you just have to roll with it and adapt. And that's one thing I hate complimenting myself, but this is one thing I've always been good at, is being able to adapt to situations and just kind of roll with the punches. It's something I've been able to do, and I'm proud that I was able to do it in this job and the other customer service jobs that I had. So yeah, overall good experience. When I moved to Estonia after my degree had finished, and this was around the time that I quit working at this hotel as well. So I think I'd graduated for about 3 months, and I was looking for work in London, and I couldn't find anything because it's really hard to find work when you've just finished your degree. Just a heads up on that. To get as much work experience as you can. And I decided to go to Estonia with my ex-girlfriend because the alternative of staying in England and working at a hotel just didn't seem preferable. And she warned me that it would be tough, and it was, but it was definitely the right choice. So we initially moved there to temporarily work in Estonia and come back, but obviously I ended up staying there for about 3 years. In the first job I had, I was helping her family's farm. They had they described it as an organic tourism farm. And I just helped out cleaning and restoring wood, just looking after animals, looking after the farm in general, cutting, using like tools that cut grass, like some sort of, I can't remember what it was called, a trimmer, I think it was called. Just farm stuff, basically digging, lots of digging and carrying things, carrying logs, big massive logs. I learned how to carry logs on my shoulder, which was amazing. I never thought I'd be able to do that. And one of the biggest jobs I had, which I'm really proud of, is we installed a septic tank, also known as within a soak pit. So I had to spend about a week or two in winter digging a massive hole that we would then put this septic tank into, which would then connect to the farmhouse and basically provide sanitation or whatever is involved with that. And for us, it was basically non-perforated pipes for a sewage system. There, I've got it here. And that was a good experience. It was hard work. It was thankless work. But being on a farm in nature, like, it was good. I was living in a farm off the coast of Estonia on an island called Saaremaa. And in this particular instance, we were there for 6 months. I'd been there before on holiday for a month or two and had helped out and stuff, but this was a full 6 months of living there whilst searching for marketing jobs. And it's like, well, if you're here, you've got to work, right? Got to keep the farm going. But I've never been one to turn away work. I've always been, as I say, up for a challenge. And this was a real challenge, both mind, body and soul. And I learned a lot from it. And it was a weirdly calming experience because I was very disconnected from the world at this point. But from a work perspective, it felt very rewarding. Like, I remember on certain days when we'd worked really, really hard, I remember myself and my ex's father would sit down and have a drink together. And it meant so much more. It wasn't just two guys having a drink. It was like two guys having a drink after a really hard work day. And we were like, yeah, we really achieved something today. We ate well and we lived well, and it was a really good experience. I recommend everyone at least once work on a farm in their life or something similar. There's a lot to be said for physical labor and getting your hands dirty and working with your hands. These days I work with a computer. It's very different. It almost doesn't feel like work. And I laugh about that a lot of the time. I often say to people, like, this isn't work, but it's because it doesn't feel like work in comparison with all those physical jobs I had. But anyway, moving it on. My first job in marketing was in Estonia. All these jobs were in Estonia. Was as a copywriter on a small contract, and I was working from home just as I am now. So it was my first kind of outing as far as working from home. And basically I was creating content for a digital marketing agency for a client involved in the online casino industry, which I didn't enjoy. And there was not a lot of guidance, if any, and I had to kind of make stuff up a lot. And I was good at that. Like, I've always preferred autonomous work, but at the same time, you need a little bit of guidance, because then it's just guesswork and you never know if you're doing it right or not. But yeah, in this instance, it was not very well paid, but it was experience. I was grateful for the experience. I finally had a position, something I could say, hey, look, I've got this marketing experience, something I could add to my existing degree and the internship that I'd done. And, I mean, it was all the things I needed and wanted to do. I was writing articles, reviews, editing, researching, proofreading, using WordPress, creating SEO optimized articles. I was being very creative. So that was something positive about it. And I was working from home, which was really cool. That job ended quite prematurely. And then I got a job as a copywriter for a financial trading company. And this job taught me so much. This company taught me a lot. I had bad experiences there, which I won't go into today, but I think I've covered them in possibly on my live stream before. But if you want to hear about them, let me know in the Q&As, and I'll answer them maybe in a follow-up episode. But today we're going to mostly just focus on the positives. And in this job, they taught me so much. They taught me about SEO. I got to do email marketing. I got to write articles. I got to use a bunch of different programs, including RFs, Google Analytics, Jira, Google Suite, Slack, Buffer, Confluence, and an internal CMS or content management system. So that was a really good experience. One of the biggest parts of it was that I got to essentially manage article audit, SEO article audit. So it's for my first time managing a full project myself and being responsible for all the different parts involved with it. And I was able to basically completely transform this section of this company's website for the better and create a template for how future articles would be written. So I was really proud of that. Still to this day, very proud of it. Off the back of that work, I was able to get promotion with the same company. And basically, I ended up finishing up by doing work where I was essentially creating statistical reports like analytics and insights, which would then be used to judge how we would do future projects. So it would kind of inform like, hey, this is what we should do moving forward. This is how we should tweak the content. This is what we should do. It was basically reviewing our content, analyzing it, and then informing the management team on how we should improve things. And there was also like A and B testing involved in that in order to come to those assumptions. I also helped on a few projects for teams outside of my team, because inevitably the longer you work in a company and the more jobs you do, the more projects that you end up doing. So that was a big part of that. Learned a lot from there, and to this day, very grateful. So thank you very much for that experience. I got a lot from it. My final job in Estonia was working for a manufacturing software company. It was a startup, and my job was completely different there. I was doing essentially like B2B sales and outreach. On paper, I was like a marketing guy, but I was more doing like sales outreach and email outreach. But I also got to do a manufacturing podcast for about 20 episodes. Got to record with a microphone. Funnily enough, the microphone that I have to this day. So that was cool. I was involved heavily with the SEO stuff as far as like securing backlinks, reviewing websites from the back end and suggesting websites that should be used for the future and targeted for the future. So there was a lot of marketing involved as well, but mostly I was facilitating partnerships between businesses and potential influencers or people of business interest that the company could work with. It's a very short-lived position, but it was good. And basically, since that point, I mean, I've been working for the past 4 months for actually I've skipped a little bit. So basically, after that, I was unemployed officially for about a year and a half, which is an asterisk. I remember I mentioned at the beginning of this that there was like an asterisk on this experience, this 10 years of work experience, because I wasn't really sure if it counts, but here's the thing. While I was unemployed, I never stopped working during that time or applying for jobs. And actually, I've been doing freelance marketing since 2018. So I was actually creating articles and working during that time. But unfortunately, it wasn't frequent enough to fully declare myself as self-employed. It would be like an article once every 4 months. So I was employed and I wasn't employed, if that makes sense. And then after about a year and a half of being unemployed, I got my current job, which I work as a freelancer for a medical health startup company. And I've done a mixture of telephone sales, outreach, and recruitment. I'm doing a lot of recruitment right now. And just kind of like idea generation, like throwing ideas their way. And they kind of just throw me a lot of different challenges, and I run with them and make them happen. I've also helped them with some of the medical services they offer. So I've been, it's been a job kind of similar to the marketing jobs I've had before, where it starts as one thing and grows into a bunch of other things. But it's a really good opportunity, and I've really enjoyed it so far. And I love the people I work with, and I love the product. And I'm not just saying that because I work there. I really do mean it. It's been a lot of fun, and I've really enjoyed my time there. Also, of course, I do the podcast. I do, acting, music, content creating, a bunch of other things that I'm slowly building towards getting money for, but not quite just yet. And crikey, have I covered everything? I suppose my self-employed work that I said I've done since 2018. So if anyone wants to employ me on that, I offer copywriting, content writing services for a decent fee. It's negotiable. And I've been doing that on a freelance basis since 2018. And I really love doing that. And that's kind of my 10 years of work experience, plus all the jobs I've had. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode as much as I've enjoyed it. As I say, if we want to do a follow-up episode and you have questions, please throw them my way, send them my way, and I'll do a follow-up episode to this. And thank you very much for listening, for watching the Christian Reeve podcast. Be safe, be well, and I'll see you in the next one.